Hey, welcome again. Today we are going to know the 15 useful things you need to know before visiting Singapore. 1. Singapore isn't just warm. It's humid. Everybody knows that Singapore is warm all year long. On the other hand, what many visitors do not realize it is not the tropical temperature but the high humidity levels that make it so uncomfortable. To paraphrase what an Australian couple once told me, stepping into Singapore is akin to entering a sauna. An island-wide sauna 24 hours a day. For folks traveling to Singapore, this means several things. You are going to get sweaty, so you need to constantly hydrate. You should also carry a small towel or something similar for the purpose of cleaning up every half hour. A change of clothing probably isn't a bad idea either. Lastly, if you're new to tropical weather, please take things slowly. The climate wears down your body in more ways than one, often without you realizing. You certainly do not want to have to visit the doctor during your stay. What to wear when visiting Singapore? Even if you are accustomed to tropical weather, it's best to wear light and comfortable clothing when here. T-shirts, flip-flops, the likes of, are worn by Singaporean everywhere. Shorts are generally fine too. That is, unless you are visiting an institution of worship. If you're heading to an establishment with a dress code, include time within your itinerary for you to return to your hotel to change. Our efficient transportation system makes this easy to do so. Why is Singapore so humid? Humidity is high in Singapore partly because it rains very often. In other words, you ought to always have an umbrella with you too. 2. Singapore has stringent duty-free regulations. Singapore's duty-free regulations on arrival are stringent, particularly for cigarettes. What's especially important to know is that there is no concession at all for tobacco regardless of origin of travel. If you've purchased a carton at your departure point or during your flight, be prepared to be taxed. The rules are less strict for alcohol. Travelers are permitted to bring in up to 3 liters of alcohol. For example, 2 liters of wine and 1 liter of beer, and vice versa. Or 1 liter of spirits, 1 liter of wine and 1 liter of beer. Needless to say, narcotics of any form are prohibited, including soft drugs and marijuana. Don't even think about it. What medicine can I bring into Singapore? There's no easy answer for this. The best way to be sure is to check with Singapore's Health Science Authority, HSA. 3. The Singaporean subway system is mostly reliable. Since the 1980s, the Singaporean subway system, known as the MRT, has been regarded as one of the best public transportation systems in the world. Regrettably, it has since somewhat fallen from that position thanks to several high-profile breakdowns in recent years. Nonetheless, the MRT system is still an efficient and affordable way to get around the island, the foremost choice of transportation for anyone visiting Singapore on a budget too. As of 2019, practically every corner of Singapore is within reasonable distance of a MRT station. 4. Taxis in Singapore are increasingly expensive. Singaporean taxis are required by law to charge by the meter. This means you should immediately walk away if a taxi driver attempts to negotiate a special package price with you. Final fares for any ride could also pile up substantially, thanks to a plethora of possible surcharges. These surcharges range from highway tolls to airport charges, to peak hour fees, to the notorious 12 AM to 6 AM 50% midnight surcharge. In short, if you are visiting Singapore on a budget, you should stick to the subway and buses. Do be aware too that private hire car services like Grab have been charging substantially in recent times too, especially during peak hours. You are unlikely to enjoy significant savings from using them. Late-night Singapore public transportation tips. The subway always operates till early morning hours on the eves of major public holidays. For example, on New Year's Eve, it operates till at least 2 AM. If you are a night owl, consider using the night buses on weekends. These services charge a low flat fee for any ride. Appropriately, one of the services is named the Night Owl. 5. You still need cash when going about Singapore. Since 2018, there is an aggressive national campaign to go cashless in Singapore. Prior to this, many methods for cashless payment in Singapore also existed. Still, it's helpful, if not essential, to always carry some cash with you. Examples of places where you would almost definitely require cash would be older hawker centers, residential neighborhood shops, and kopitiams, eateries, coffee shops. Unless you intend to splurge on expensive goods, I'd say having anything between $50 and $100 would be more than enough for one day. If you do run out, ATMs are everywhere. Money changers are also widely available. 6. Airbnb rentals are illegal for most Singaporean properties. More than 80% of Singaporeans live in leased public housing known as HDB estates. Under local laws, lessees are not permitted to rent out their properties to tourists. Rental is also only permitted for visitors holding student passes or long-term social visit passes. Since 2017, even private property owners are prohibited from renting out their properties for less than 3 months. They can only do so with permission from the government. For tourists traveling to Singapore, the implication of these laws are many. You are unlikely to be arrested for staying in a non-Airbnb permitted residence, but you certainly run the risk of your bags and yourself thrown out into the streets overnight. If you are visiting Singapore on a budget, my advice is to consider hostels in areas like Chinatown and Little India, many of which are hippie, atmospheric, and decently operated. Alternatively, there are also several budget hotel chains operating in the country. Hotel 81 and Fragrance Hotels are the most famous names in this niche. 7. Singapore is safe, not crime-free. Singapore prides itself on being one of the safest cities in the world. That said, it naturally doesn't mean the country is crimeless. For travelers, the most common threats are scams and drunken brawls. In the case of the latter, many recent cases curiously involve the drunk assaulting taxi drivers. If you happen to encounter such incidents when visiting Singapore, please immediately notify the police at 999. If you are unfortunate enough to be within an establishment when someone gets rowdy, do not panic, just leave as quickly as possible. Be assured that the staff would have called for help before you are even through the door. Finally, snapping pictures and videos of such fracasses is akin to inviting the violence to attend to you. Your priority should always be to quickly leave. What if I'm scammed while in Singapore? Call the police at 999, or ask any person on the street for directions to the nearest police station. 8. Free Wi-Fi is plentiful, but could be a hassle. Many places in Singapore offer free Wi-Fi. For example, shopping malls and museums. You could also sign up for a free account at Wireless at SG on arrival. Once registered, you can enjoy internet connection at any of the numerous Wireless at SG hotspots around the country. Given they are free, such connections expectedly fluctuate when it comes to signal strength, particularly at crowded areas like Singapore Changi Airport and fast food restaurants. If you're fussy about this, head to the nearest 7-Eleven convenience store and pick up a tourist SIM card instead. These are remarkably affordable and come in many options. To give an example, a Singtel tourist SIM card with 100 GB local data allowance costs but 15 Singaporean dollars as of 2020. Some versions are EZ-Link enabled too, i.e. you can use them to take the subway as well. It's a low price for island-wide convenience. 9. Most Singaporeans speak some degree of English. Most Singaporeans speak some degree of English, though you might need some time to get used to local intonations and colloquiums. As a general guide, what's useful to know about Singaporean English, or Singlish, are the following. Most Singaporeans tend to speak English faster than Americans and Europeans. The less fluent also tend to clip pronunciations. Singlish often includes onomatopoeic words for emphasis. The most infamous ones are la and lo. Once you are mindful of these, you tend to subconsciously ignore them. 10. There is no need to tip in Singapore. Nearly all restaurants and cafes charge a 10% service fee on top of the usual consumption tax. Because of this, tipping is generally considered unnecessary at such establishments. Conversely, less formal eateries such as hawker centers and food courts do not charge service or consumption tax. Neither do fast food outlets. Nonetheless, most Singaporeans would find it odd to tip at these places. In other words, you wouldn't be stared or frowned at if you follow suit. The lack of any need to tip doesn't mean you couldn't or shouldn't. Leaving your spare change or an extra note will always be appreciated. 11. Tap water in Singapore is safe. Even delicious. It is widely known that Singapore tap water is perfectly safe to drink. To this, I'd add that it's even palatable, with no weird odor or taste. When visiting Singapore, this means there is absolutely no need to buy bottled water. That is, unless you need the bottle. Take note though. Tap water being safe for consumption doesn't mean it wouldn't be contaminated by the pipes carrying it. While there is no way for anyone to be completely sure, it's usually a bad idea to fill up from rusty and tarnished taps. Coloration of the water is a sure sign of contamination too. Singaporean tap water is clear. Know that most Singaporeans would also balk at the idea of drinking straight from the tap at places like coffee shops and hawker centers. Many would even consider it disgusting. 12. It is phenomenally expensive to smoke and drink in Singapore. I have previously written about ways to save money when traveling to Singapore. In that write-up, I highlighted how expensive it is to smoke and drink alcohol here. I cannot repeat this enough. In fact, prices have shot up again since that write-up. If you have to drink alcohol when in Singapore, try to have some of your sessions at hawker centers and kopitiams. They don't serve hard liquor or wine, though. You could also buy back from supermarket chains such as NTUC Fair Price. As for cigarettes, sadly, there's no way around it. You either pay the high prices or give your lungs a break. Is vaping illegal in Singapore? As of 2019, it is still illegal to possess, purchase or use e-cigarettes, e-pipes and e-cigars in Singapore. 13. Be aware of the new Singaporean alcohol consumption regulations. In 2015, Singapore implemented a series of rather draconian liquor control laws to minimize public disturbances. Under these laws, consumption of alcohol is banned in all public places from 10:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. Retail shops are also not permitted to sell takeaway alcohol from 10:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. Note that the term public places does not include licensed pubs, restaurants, etc. The precincts of Geylang and Little India have stricter laws. At these places, public drinking is banned from 7 a.m. on Saturday to 7 a.m. on Mondays. Public drinking is also banned from 7 p.m. on the eve of a public holiday to 7 a.m. after the holiday. Shops in these two areas are not permitted to sell takeaway alcohol from 7 p.m. onwards on weekends. Stringent as they sound, these laws simply mean you can only drink at licensed establishments during affected hours. 14. Singapore is expensive to visit, but there are still many free attractions. Here's a quick list of free attractions in Singapore. Given the quality of all, I dare say these freebies are among the best attractions in Singapore too: the dramatic HSBC Sky Vortex and Shiseido Forest Valley at Jewel Changi Airport. Open-air performances at places such as the Esplanade, the Singapore Botanical Gardens, Ngee Ann City Civic Plaza, and so on. All parks in Singapore are free for all to enter. This includes Gardens by the Bay. At Gardens, only the Flower and Cloud domes charge entry fees. Chinese and Indian temples, and churches, are generally free for all to enter. The Singapore Botanical Gardens, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, charges no entry fee. The truly weird Haw Par Villa also charges no entry fee. The light and water shows at Gardens by the Bay and Marina Bay Sands are free. Singapore Changi Airport offers 2 free city tours for visitors transients through Singapore. There is also a walking tour of Jewel Changi Airport. Last but not least, festive light-ups. See below, there's practically one every other month. 15. Singapore adores light-ups. Nowadays, there is a light-up somewhere in Singapore every month. Other than those for ethnic, religious celebrations such as Chinese New Year and Christmas, there are also artistic illuminations such as the Singapore Night Festival and the I Light Marina Bay Sustainable Light Art Festival. What's great about these light-ups is also that it's never just about elaborate street decorations. Festive areas always have bazaars and free street performances, with some bazaars covering entire streets. Visiting one of these light-ups could easily be your most memorable experience when visiting Singapore. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any videos.